Okay, I hope you all had a wonderful Pesach, and I apologize for last week. The boys' yeshivas don't start till Rosh Chodesh, so I didn't realize that Mayanot would be early. Okay. So I want to talk today a little bit about the mitzvah of counting the Omer and some aspects. Now, obviously, on one level, I'll say right off the top of the bat that the mitzvah of counting the Omer is not a mitzvah that women are obligated to do. And the reason why they're not obligated to do is because it is a time-bound positive commandment, because it's only for 49 days during the year. And even though there are many exceptions to that rule, but the Omer is not one of the exceptions, and therefore it's a mitzvah taseh shazman grama, and women are peturos. Nevertheless, as you know, and we've talked about this before, even a mitzvah taseh shazman grama that women are peturos, they are permitted to do, and if they do, they get reward. They get reward based on what's called eno mitzvah v'yosa, meaning the reward for doing something you don't have to do is less than the reward for something you have to do, but you still get reward. And at least if you're Ashkenazi, I think everyone here is Ashkenazi, and that includes Chabad, not only can you do the mitzvah, but you can even make a bracha. So, for example, a woman does not have to sit in a sukkah. Absolutely not. But if she sits in the sukkah, she makes a leishei basukkah. A woman does not have to take lulav and esrog. But if she takes lulav and esrog, she makes a bracha. So the Omer is the same idea. A woman is not obligated to count the Omer, but if she wants to count the Omer, she can make a bracha, just like every mitzvah saseh shezman grama. Now, if she would be Sephardic, that's actually not the psak. For a Sephardi, based on Rabbi Yosef Karo, even if a woman does a mitzvah, which is Zaman Grama, she cannot make a bracha because she cannot say the words Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvosav, that God sanctified it by His commandments because she was not commanded. Ashkenazim say Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvosav is a reference to the Jewish people as a whole, but Sephardim say it has to be a reference to the specific person saying the bracha. So that's actually a huge machlokas between Ashkenazim and Sephardim, whether a woman who does a voluntary mitzvah taseh shezman grama makes a bracha or does not make a bracha. Ashkenazim say they make a bracha. Sephardim say they do not make a bracha. So Omer would be lulav, sukkah. Omer would be examples where that machlokas would come to pass. Now, obviously, on a mitzvah that a woman is obligated, of course she makes the bracha, reading Megillah. So a woman makes a bracha of Megillah, because there she could say, Asher Kiddishanu, God commanded us, because a woman is obligated. The machlokas Ashkenazim and Sephardim is only for those mitzvahs that a woman is exempt. Okay. Now there is a little bit of a thought, the Magen Avram, one of the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, actually brings, that perhaps women should be discouraged from attempting to count the Omer because it's so easy to forget a day, and in which case all of the blessings might be in vain. Okay, but nevertheless, the custom is that we do allow women to make the bracha. The overall idea of counting the Omer is relatively clear, and that is, it's a way of connection. You're connecting Pesach to the holiday of Shavuos. Pesach is called Zaman Cherusenu, the season of our freedom. Shavuos is Zaman Matan Torasenu, the season where God gave us the Torah. And we want to recognize that the freedom without Torah is just animal freedom. And it's the Torah that is the purpose of the Exodus and gives meaning to the Exodus. And therefore, in a sense, you can actually look, the Ramban uses this language. The whole period of the Omer is like a Chol HaMoed. You can even look at Pesach and Shavuos as one holiday. Of course, Pesach has its own Chol HaMoed, but Pesach, Shavuos are one long holiday. And the long Chol HaMoed that connects Pesach and Shavuos is the counting of the Omer. Okay, so that's the idea. Now, Chazal make this point in a very simple way. They point out, let's go back to Omer, first of all. Counting of the Omer. What does the word Omer even mean? What is Omer? So the truth of the matter is, Omer is just a certain volume, like a bushel. It's a certain measure of volume. And the reason we call it the counting of the Omer is because on the second day of Pesach, a barley offering was brought in the Beis Hamikdash, and it was an Omer of barley flour. And we start counting the days from the day that we bring the Omer. Okay, the count. So really, in truth, grammatically, I don't really have an answer for this. We really shouldn't call it the counting of the Omer. It really should be called the counting from the Omer. Sfira, mi Omer, because the Omer was the event which triggered the counting of the days. So Chazal point out that the grain offering on Pesach, which of course was not chametz, they didn't let it leaven, was barley. On Shavuos, there was also a grain offering, but the grain offering are 2 loaves of wheat. So Pesach is barley, that's the Omer. Shavuos are called the Shtei Halechem, 2 loaves of bread that are wheat. And Chazal point out that barley was commonly fed to animals, and wheat is eaten by human beings. So what's the lesson? The freedom of Pesach, when it's not connected to Torah, is like the freedom of a wild animal. And it is only with Torah that it becomes human dignity. Right? So that's the general idea of the counting of the Omer, to link the holiday of freedom with the holiday of commitment. There's actually a beautiful metaphor that's given by a non-Jewish poet, and nothing to do with Torah, but you can take it and apply it to Torah. This was an Indian poet, an Asian Indian poet, Tagore, Tagore. He lived in the 1920s, 30s, and he actually won the Nobel Prize for Literature. And he once said, a human soul is like a violin string. A violin string is capable of beautiful music. But imagine if you have a string that's totally loose. I have a string on my kitchen table. What music can you get from a totally loose string? You can't get anything. Paradoxically, the music that is within the string can be expressed only if the violin string is tied down and stretched across the bridge of the instrument. Now you might say, well, wait a second. That's enslaving me. That's tying me down. So this is exactly the human condition. We think, if only I would be free to do what I want, to be what I want, then I could express all of my beauty, all of my creativity, all of my abilities. Paradoxically, it's only when the string is tied down that the music within can come out. And that's exactly the idea of what Chazal say, Ein ben chorin ella misha osek b'Torah. The only person who is truly free is the person who learns the Torah and is connected to the Torah. And that is why, once again, Pesach and Shavuos are one long holiday. Pesach is freedom, Shavuos is submission to Hashem, and it is only submission to Hashem that gives a person true freedom. Now, a few things halachically. Halachically, there's a huge machlokas if the counting of the Omer today is a Torah commandment or it is only a rabbinic commandment. Now, when I say only a rabbinic, I don't mean only that it's less important, but it's not a Torah law, it is a rabbinic law. Now, you may ask, why should it be a rabbinic law? After all, it's in the Torah. The mitzvah of counting of the Omer is one of the 613 commandments of the Torah. But here's the kinech. Most commentators actually say that the counting of the Omer today is midrabanan because the Torah's requirement of counting the Omer is only when you bring the sacrifice of the Omer. Because what does the Torah say? From the day that you bring the Omer sacrifice, you shall count 49 days, with the 50th day being Shavuos. Implying, most Rishonim say, that when there's no korban of Omer, like today, we don't yet have the Beis HaMikdash, there's no korban of Omer, there's no chiyuv of counting, and therefore, according to these Rishonim, the only reason we count the Omer today is called Zecher LaMikdash, to remember what they did when they had a Beis HaMikdash, so that Be'ezras Hashem, when we have the Beis HaMikdash and we bring the Omer, then we're going to fulfill the Torah requirement. This is the view of most Rishonim, that Sefirat Haomer Bizman Hazeh is Midrabanan Zecher, right? Zecher, a commemoration, LaMikdash, of what was done when there was a Beis HaMikdash. There is one major authority who argues with Tosfos, and this is the Rambam. The Rambam's opinion is that Sefirat Haomer, even Bizman Hazeh, is the Oraisa, because the Rambam maintains that the chiyuv, the obligation of counting, is generated by the day, the second day of Pesach. It is not generated by the bringing of the Omer, and even if you don't bring the Omer, the halacha still is that you count. Now, as a practical difference, is there a practical difference if something is a Torah law or something is a rabbinic law? Because you have to keep both of them, right? It doesn't mean because it's rabbinic, that doesn't mean it's less important. So is there, as to use a yeshivish term, is there a nafkamina, right? Nafkamina, if you want to impress a boy that you're dating or whatever it is, use the word nafkamina in conversation, he will be very impressed. Nafkamina simply means, is there a practical difference? Is there a nafkamina whether something is a rabbinic law or something is a Torah law? As a matter of fact, there actually is a very practical difference, which is not so relevant in Israel, but in Chutz La'aretz it comes up a lot. And that is, we know when it comes to a Torah law, if you're in doubt whether you fulfilled it or not, you have to err on the side of being strict. Strict. This is called Safek D'Oraisa. Every doubt concerning a Torah law must be l'chumra, you must be strict. But when something is a rabbinic law and you're not sure if you did it, you are permitted to be lenient. So let me give you a simple example. Let's assume I ate bread and somehow I don't remember if I benched or didn't bench. I just don't remember. So since benching on bread is a Torah requirement, if you're in doubt whether you benched or not, you have to say benching again. Or maybe it's only the first time. You have to bench because of Safek D'Oraisa L'Chumra. If, on the other hand, I don't remember if I davened mincha or not, I don't remember. Since davening mincha is at most a Rabbanan requirement, you are allowed to give yourself the benefit of the doubt. Right? These are two famous rules. One is Safek D'Oraisa, any doubt pertaining to a Torah law. L'chumra, you must be strict. And the converse rule is Safek D'Rabbanan, any doubt regarding a rabbinic law is lakula, you are allowed to be lenient. Now, we know in Judaism, of course, one of the fundamental rules in Judaism is that a new day begins at night. Like Shabbos begins Friday night, etc. Every new day. So technically, when it's Monday night, it's technically Tuesday, right? We begin at night. Now, what is the definition of night? This is really important. Like, when does Shabbos begin? What is night? So we have an interesting point here, an interesting dichotomy in halacha. Absolute night does not exist until it is so dark that you can see 3 stars in the sky. That's called Seit HaKochavim. However, there's an earlier stage of night, and that is sunset, where the sun sets below the horizon. That's called Shtias Hachama, the setting of the sun, or sometimes we just refer to it as Shtia. Now, there's a certain amount of time between sunset and the stars coming out. Because after the sun sets, there's still like light in the sky. Now, what is the status of the time between sunset and the stars coming out? So this is very interesting. In fact, the English term for that period is twilight. This is called Bein Hashmashot. And Bein Hashmashos is a suffix. It is a halachically doubt whether it's night or whether it's day. And therefore, you have to err on the side of strictness. Now, this explains, for example, Shabbos. Shabbos is not 24 hours. Shabbos is closer to 25 hours. We cannot start Shabbos later than sunset, because we have to stop. We stop even earlier than that, but at an absolute, you must stop. You wouldn't even light Shabbos candles. You must stop all malacha by sunset. And yet, Shabbos is not over sunset Saturday night. You have to wait until 3 stars are out. Why is that so? Because twilight, and the halachic term for twilight is Bein Hashmashos, is a suffix if it's day or night. So Friday afternoon, I have to be machmir and treat it like night. And that's why I got to stop doing malacha, because Shabbos began. But Saturday night, it's exactly the opposite. I have to be machmir and treat it like day, so I have to wait until the stars come out. In other words, even though it's inconsistent, because you might say, well, mimanavshach, either way you look at it. If twilight is day, so I can't end Shabbos then, but I don't have to begin Shabbos then. And if twilight is night, I should be able to end Shabbos when the sun sets. The answer is, halacha doesn't know if it's day or night, and therefore I got to be strict at both ends. I got to treat it like night Friday afternoon, and I have to treat it like day Shabbos afternoon. And that's why the duration of Shabbos, putting aside adding to Shabbos, which is a separate mitzvah, the duration of Shabbos is going to be from sunset, Shtia, until Tzeis HaKochavim, which will be, again, approximately, it'll be close to 25 hours. Now, let's take a bris. We know that we do a bris, if the child is healthy, on the 8th day of the child's birth. So if the kid is born on Monday, we will do the bris next Monday. If the kid is born on Tuesday, we will do the bris next Tuesday. Right? Everyone knows that. Now, if a child is born Monday night after the stars came out already, that's a Tuesday child, not a Monday child. So his bris is going to be Tuesday. If a child is born before sunset on Monday, that's a Monday child for sure. We'll do the bris on Monday. But what if the child is born in the twilight period? What if the child is born, and this happens, by the way, this is not an uncommon thing. A child is born in the period of time between sunset and the stars coming out, which can be anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes. It depends on the time of year and the place. So let's assume it's Monday going into Tuesday. If Bein Hashmashos is day, he's a Monday baby and his bris is Monday. If Bein Hashmashos is night, he's a Tuesday baby, so his bris is Tuesday. And since Bein Hashmashos is a suffix meaning it's a doubt, we don't know if his 8th day is Monday or his 8th day is Tuesday. So what day do we do the bris? The answer is we have to do the bris on Tuesday. Because here is the thing. A bris is kosher if it's late, but a bris is not kosher if it's early. So Monday is either day 7 or day 8. Because it's day 7 if he's a Tuesday baby. Monday is either day 7 or day 8. Tuesday is either day 8 or day 9. Now, it's true, if I'm doing it on Tuesday, there is a chance I'm not fulfilling the mitzvah of doing the bris on the 8th day. But at worst, it's at least a 9th day bris. So the bris is kosher. Masha Einken, if I did the bris on Monday, well, maybe it's the 8th day, in which case it's good. But maybe it's the 7th day, in which case it's no good. So whenever you're not sure if the bris should be an earlier day or a later day, you always have to go with the later day, because there for sure it's a kosher bris. Because remember, a late bris is kosher, even if it's not optimal. An early bris is actually not a good bris, not a valid bris. Okay, yeah.
What do you do if the bris is on Shabbat?
So that's mamish the next thing I'm going to talk about. So now, let's look at the following scenario, in which you have a very interesting, perhaps counterintuitive rule. We do know that the mitzvah of bris is so important that it even overrides Shabbos. So if a baby is born on Shabbos, we do the bris on Shabbos, even though you're causing bleeding and things that are forbidden on Shabbos. Now, on the other hand, the only bris that can be done on Shabbos is an 8-day bris. If you are delaying the bris for, say, medical reasons or whatever it is, if it's the 9th day, the 10th day, the 30th day, you don't do it on Shabbos, right? This, in other words, this is only an 8-day bris is docha Shabbos, override Shabbos. A bris that's not on the 8th day does not override Shabbos. So now, let's consider a child who is born on Friday. So again, let's first take the simple cases. If he's born on Friday before sunset, he's a Friday baby, so his bris is going to be Friday, no problem. If he's born after the stars come out, say Sako Chavim, he's a Shabbos baby, we do the bris on Shabbos. Those are simple. But here's the problem. What if the baby is born Bein HaShmashos Friday? What if he is born between Shkia sunset, and Seisei Kochavim? So now, since Bein HaShmashos is halachically a suffix, whether it's day or night, so if it's day, he's a Friday baby, so his bris is Friday. On the other hand, if it's night, he's a Shabbos baby, so his bris is Shabbos. But here's the problem. I can't do the bris on Friday, and I can't do the bris on Shabbos. I can't do the bris on Friday because maybe it's too early, because if he's a Shabbos baby, Friday is day 7, and an early bris is no good. But here's the thing. I can't do the bris on Shabbos because Shabbos is either day 8 or day 9. If it's day 9, I'm not allowed to do a late bris on Shabbos. So in such a situation, I gotta do the bris on Sunday. Now what's interesting is, Sunday is for sure not the 8th day. Sunday is either day 9 or day 10. I'm for sure doing it on the wrong day. There's not a single chance that it's the 8th day. Nevertheless, that's the earliest I can do it. So in such a situation, I'm going to lose the mitzvah of doing it on the 8th day, because there literally is no earlier time I can do it before Sunday. This comes back to the idea that Bein HaShmashos, twilight, is halachically a suffix, whether it's night or whether it's day, and therefore you have to err on the side of strictness when it comes to Torah laws, like Shabbos and like a bris milah. Now,
what is the rule about having a bris on Shabbat when you're the son of a convert? Like, why is there a law about that?
I'm saying the son of a convert or a convert who's having a...
Like, if the mother is a convert.
Maybe there's something I'm missing. I'm not aware of any problem there. Meaning to say, if a woman converted to Judaism, and and then had a child from a Jewish husband, as far as I know, the bris is done on Shabbos.
Because my brother was born on Shabbat, my mom converted, and they couldn't find, and it took them a very, very long time to find someone who would do it.
They had the bris on Shabbos or not?
He was born on Shabbos.
Were you told that there's a problem because of the conversion? Because sometimes it's hard to get a moel for Shabbos because...
They were told it was because she was a convert, yeah.
Okay, I don't know. I will tell you that sometimes it is hard. Not all moelim, especially if somebody lives not in a Jewish neighborhood. Now again, I personally feel a moel has a responsibility. All right, I don't know. I'll check. Maybe there's something I'm missing. Now the thing that you don't do on Shabbos, the bris of a convert. If a baby is being adopted and a baby is being converted, we don't do the bris on Shabbos for the baby. That much is true. Or an adult convert for that matter. But the child of a woman who converted, I don't know why you wouldn't. I don't know why you wouldn't do.
I heard an interesting story though about a grandfather that never had a bris.
Yeah.
And his grandson was having a bris on Shabbos, and he said, "Oh, maybe I'll do one at the same time."
And what did they?
And because they knew if they didn't do it that same day, he would change his mind. He would say, "Oh, I didn't."
Okay, so that.
And then they did it.
That's very interesting. But that I have to say was maybe an unusual, exceptional rule. That would not be the normal halacha. We would not do a conversion bris on Shabbos.
No, it was just a Jewish man, but he never had.
No, I understand. All I'm saying is, well, let me put it this way: we don't do a late bris on Shabbos either. So obviously, if he didn't have a bris till he's an adult, that's way beyond the eighth day. Now, there's another little bit of.
I just remember it was they couldn't find someone to do it, and they said that was the reason.
Maybe it's because you weren't living in an Orthodox neighborhood?
No,
I don't know. I'll check it. This is literally the. I have never heard of such a halacha before, so I'm going to check it. Now I'll tell you another little. I shouldn't call it trivia, but a little unusual halacha that people don't know. For reasons that I don't know either, it's based on a drasha and a pasuk. A cesarean birth doesn't have a bris on Shabbos. So that's a situation that in order to allow Shabbos to be set aside, it has to be a normal vaginal delivery and not a cesarean. Okay, now why am I digressing here? Because I want to point out the following. In America, it's very, very common, outside of yeshivos and the like, that Mariv is davened after sunset. Because it's hard to get people. People come for mincha, and if you wait until it's dark, till Seisach Chavim, people are either going to leave or it'll be hard to get a minyan. So what they typically do is they daven mincha right before sunset, and they daven mariv right after sunset, but before the stars come out. In other words, they daven mariv bein hashmashos, and you're allowed to do that. But the question is, if it's during the Omer period, are you allowed to count the new day of the Omer in the Bein Hashmashos uncertainty? Because remember, if Bein Hashmashos is a doubt whether it's day or night, it may not be the new day yet. In other words, if today is the 14th of the Omer, but tonight is the 15th, how can I count the 15th Bein Hashmashos? Bein Hashmashos might still be the 14th. So in Lamdos, in academic yeshiva learning, this would depend on whether the counting of the Omer is a Torah law or a rabbinic law. If I say the counting of the Omer is a Torah law, I got to be strict, and I wouldn't be allowed to count the new Omer day until nightfall. Says HaKochavim. If on the other hand I follow the view that counting of the Omer is Rabbanan, I would be allowed to err on the side of leniency and treat it like night for the next day. Right? So the custom is people do count the Omer in shul early, but they try to recount it at home later without making the bracha again. Okay. So that's a nafkamina. That's a difference whether the Omer is the Oraisa or Durabanan. Now, what are the
Is there something with counting with a million specifically?
No, the Omer does not have to be counted with a million.
So why don't they just wait until they get home?
You're correct. In fact, a lot of times typically we'll tell a person wait till you get home. But the only problem is sometimes he's the chazan, and also sometimes we're afraid he might forget. So better to count early than just forget totally. Okay. Now, let's go over. You probably went over this just briefly. It's very easy to forget counting the Omer. And you know when it's most likely to forget? At the beginning. In fact, if you're going to forget counting the Omer, it's most likely going to happen during the week of Pesach itself, because you're not yet used to doing it. Once you're used to doing it, you tend to remember a little bit more. So, what are the halachas about forgetting? Now, here is the issue. The issue is this. When the Torah describes counting 7 weeks of the Omer, it uses the phrase Sheva Shabbasos Timimos Tihiyana. 7 Timimos, 7 complete weeks. Underline the word Timimos, complete. The counting has to be complete. When you miss a day, the counting is not totally complete. So here is the rule. If you totally missed a day, you just forgot to count today, for example, is the 21st day of the Omer. If you simply forgot to count the 21st day of the Omer, you can no longer make a bracha on any other days. You count without a bracha, or you try to hear somebody say a bracha to be motzi. But here it's a little complicated. If I forgot to count at night, okay, let's take today as a good example. Last night, we counted the 21st day of the Omer. Now let's say I didn't count last night. So today, I can still count day 21 without a bracha. And if I count day 21 without a bracha, I can resume at night day 22 with a bracha. So if I didn't count at night, I lose my bracha for the night, for that day. But as long as I count without a bracha during the day, I can resume my count at night. But if I not only miss the night, but I also miss the day, then I forfeited the bracha totally, and I can only count without a bracha for the rest of the Omer period, unless, of course, I hear the rabbi or somebody can make a bracha to be motzi, but I would not be allowed to take a bracha. Okay, so everyone understands the basic principle. The basic principle here is, again, this is a good example. If I missed day 21 last night, I could say it now without a bracha, and then I could resume day 22 with a bracha at night. If, however, I forgot to say day 21 at all until it's already dark, so I missed day 21 totally, I've lost my ability to make a bracha on the rest of the Omer. I still count, but I don't make a bracha because it's no longer tamimos. It is no longer going to be complete.
So what if you count during the day on day 21?
Day
21, you count during the day because you forgot at night. So you count during the day without a bracha.
Yeah.
Day 22, you also forgot at night, but you count during the day without a bracha.
Yeah.
So you pick up day 23 with a bracha?
Yes. This can happen as many times as you want. This can happen 45 times.
Okay.
Meaning as long as you never missed a complete day and you made it up in the daytime, you will be permitted to make the bracha on the following nights. Okay, so it's not only a one-time mistake, it's no matter how many times you made that mistake. Yeah.
How come you can't say the bracha in the day?
Yeah. So the truth of the matter is because it goes back to another aspect of Tamimo. Some say that because you have to count a complete day, and a complete day in Judaism is the night and the day. So if you miss the night, your count is not complete vis-a-vis that day. So we say do it, but don't make a bracha because it's not clearly going to be tamimos. Okay. So now, yeah.
We were having this discussion on Shabbos that someone thought that they learned that you can't hear someone else count.
Yeah. So this is important halacha. Many Mefarshim learn that Sefirat Haomer, unlike Kiddush, unlike Havdalah, is a personal obligation. One person cannot count the Omer for another person.
But you can still hear somebody else make the bracha.
That's what I'm saying. You can hear somebody say the bracha for
You
you,
still have to do it.
but the actual counting of the day must be done by you. So you cannot ask somebody, please count for me. You can ask somebody, please make a bracha with me in mind, but not the counting itself. This is machlokas. Some Rishonim do allow this, but la halacha, it is better to be strict. Now, you know the famous thing that in order to make the bracha, once you've counted, you can't. If you did count, you can't make the bracha anymore. So you got to make it before the counting. So let's say tonight. Tonight is going to be 22nd day. Now, once it's night, if I ask you what day of the Omer is it tonight, you're not supposed to say 22.
You say yes.
Because once you said 22, you did the mitzvah, and then you wouldn't be able to make the bracha. So the custom is, we always say the day before.
Right.
If I ask you, now I can say 22 because it's not the time to count it yet. But once it's night, if you were to ask me what day of the Omer is it, I would say yesterday we
No,
counted.
can you say tomorrow is or no?
Yeah, you can do it that way too. Yeah, that's fine. I've never heard it done that way, but yeah, you can do
Well,
it
then
that
my
way.
question is like,
Maybe
when
maybe
you
addition is
counted-
easier than subtraction. I don't know. It's easier for me to count up than subtract. So they have a whole bunch of jokes about this. Shabbat brachos, like husband asks wife, what are we having for supper? So the wife says, well, yesterday we had chicken. Whatever. It's different things of not giving a direct answer. Yeah.
But this person was saying that they heard that it wasn't allowed to even, like, let's say you were making the bracha and counting, so you could say the bracha out loud, but then when you count, she was like needed to leave the room because if she heard them count, then she wouldn't be able to count.
No. That's I think there's a misunderstanding there. The only thing the halacha says is somebody cannot count for you. There's no prohibition
But
in
it's
your listening to them.
To hear.
And then also you shouldn't say it until you're ready to make it.
And you shouldn't say it till you make the bracha, yeah, or someone made the bracha for you. I don't even understand what that means. When I'm in shul, what does that mean? When I'm in shul, I hear 100 people counting the Omer.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what it means.
Good.
I can't hear somebody count
Just
count
wanted to make
the
sure.
Omer. Yeah.
What's the cutoff time for counting at night with the bracha?
Say again,
The cutoff time for counting at night, like with the bracha.
Oh, night. So again, starting from the stars coming out until dawn. Dawn is not sunrise. Dawn is 72 minutes before sunrise. First light. So that dawn now I think is like 4:56. So you have the whole night. You have literally the whole night to do it with a bracha at that point. Once it's dawn, now it is then day. So day you count without a bracha. Okay, everyone gets the general rule here. Okay.
Dawn is late.
No. So these are two different terms. Okay, let me give you some Hebrew terms here. There's amud. All right, just like at night we have shkia, seisa kochavim, bein hashmashas, which is twilight. So we have two terms in the morning. We have amud hashachar, which is dawn, and we have neitz hachama, which is sunrise. Now dawn is earlier than sunrise. Sunrise is when the sun begins. You see the orb of the sun coming up. Dawn is 72 minutes earlier than that, when there's light on the horizon, but there's no visible ball of the sun that's come up. Okay? So, l'chatchila, one should not daven shachris shmon esrei until neitz hachama, But one can start davening Shachar from Amud HaShachar until you get up to Shemona Esrei. Fast days, for example. I mean, the day fast days. I mean, not Tisha B'Av, but the fast days that begin in the morning begin Amud HaShachar. So you're allowed to eat until dawn. Once it's dawn, the day has begun. You're not allowed to eat at that point if it's a day fast. Okay, so now I'm going to mention something very, very, very interesting. As which I think is interesting for Chabad people, maybe especially. That the Rebbe generally, although obviously he was fully capable, but he did typically not get involved in psak halacha. He had rabbanim and he had dayanim and people who were in charge of paskening shaylos. If you washed your milchik fork with a fleshik sponge, you wouldn't have yechidus with the Rebbe to ask him, what do you do with your fork and sponge? But there were a few interesting cases, where the Rebbe actually did paskin halacha l'maisa. One of them, I think we talked about a long time ago, just to remind you, is that the Rebbe paskin, this was not unique to him, though many other people paskin that way as well, that the laws of yichud and hugging and kissing apply with full severity to adopted children. People always ask the question, if I adopt a daughter, am I allowed to hug, kiss her? Is there a prohibition of yichud? Because a father to a daughter or a mother to a son, you don't have these prohibitions. So do they apply to adopted children? So the Rebbe was actually strict. The Rebbe said they don't apply to babies, but once they reach the age of yichud and chibuk, hugging and kissing, it applies. That's one example. Okay, that's not relevant to today at all. But another example is very, very relevant, and this gets us into a very complicated issue, and that is the international dateline. The international dateline has huge halachic issues in many, many areas.
What is that?
Okay, I'll explain it in a moment. In fact, you can write a big book on it, and there are, in fact, big books on it. Okay. The international dateline starts off with the following idea. The Earth is a sphere. The Earth is round. Now, as you go east, let's take it from New York. As you go east of New York, time gets later. So when it's 10 a.m. in New York, it'll be 11 a.m. east, and then 12, and that eventually when you hit Israel, let's say, it'll be 7 hours later. So as you go east, time gets later, right? As you go west, time gets earlier. Okay, so when it's 10 o'clock in California, it's 9 o'clock in Chicago, and it's 8 o'clock in Denver, and it'll be 7 o'clock in Los Angeles. Right?
In New York, you mean?
No, when it's 10 o'clock in New York, it'll be 7 a.m. in Los Angeles, right? Okay. So just look at it, imagine the globe. Later, earlier. But here's the problem. When you have a circle, eventually they're going to bump into each other. Early, late. Right? What happens? So the concept of an international dateline says there is a certain line, an imaginary line, that once the line is crossed, there's going to be a 24-hour difference. In other words, one side of the line will be 10 a.m. Monday, and the other side of the line will be 10 a.m. Tuesday, or 10 a.m. Sunday, depending on how it works. Now, again, you have to, we don't have a globe here, right? Okay. If we had a physical globe, it would be easier to show you this. That is the following. The dateline could theoretically be drawn anywhere, but it has to be there somewhere. It has to be a place where essentially it's the end of the east. It keeps on getting later, and west keeps on, east, later, west is earlier, but there has to be a place where the west stops and to the east. That's called the dateline. So the international dateline, based on the present map, happens to be right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, where there are very few, almost no islands. You cross in the middle of the Rosh. Let's say you're going to Australia. Right? You're going from California to Australia. You cross the international date line. Now, the technical definition is it's 180 degrees from Greenwich, England. Why that was chosen? Okay.
Because on the map, that's like the middle point of a map.
It's what it say?
On the Western maps,
Yeah.
like they have America on the left side and Asia on the right side. That's like the middle point.
Right. That's
so
correct.
they say like this is like the
Right.
zero line.
That's like zero because like nothing, not too much is
Like
there.
how you started at New York.
Yeah.
The Western world decided to start at Greenwich.
Greenwich. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what this means is the following. When you're going east, when you're going east and you cross the date line, you will go back into the past. Meaning, let's imagine you're traveling east to Australia, you're traveling east, and it's Tuesday. When you cross the date line, all of a sudden it's Monday. You go from Tuesday to Monday. And when you go west, and it's Tuesday, all of a sudden you're going to cross into Wednesday. You see? Because as you go east, you're going to go a day earlier. That's called gaining a day, because you're simply reliving that day. When you go west, you're going to be losing a day, because it's going to be a day later. Now this has huge repercussions. First of all, it has repercussions about Shabbos and all sorts of things. But I just want to focus on the Omer and really go over a very interesting chiddush of the Rebbe. Now, unlike his psak about adoption, which most poskim followed, so the Rebbe was not a trailblazer in that psak. This is a real chiddush, and most people who are not Chabad do not follow it. And I'm not even sure if Chabad people follow it. So if it's relevant to you in any way, be sure to ask a shaila. But let me just tell you the situation. Let's assume I'm going from Los Angeles to Australia. Okay, it's Monday. Well, okay, let's use today as an example. Today is
Sunday.
Today's Sunday. Okay. Let's assume it's Sunday, the 21st day of the Omer. Today is Sunday, 21st day of the Omer. And I daven Shacharis, I daven Sunday. I'm going towards Australia. I cross the date line. All of a sudden, I move from Sunday to Monday. Now, for me, this is the 21st day of the Omer. But in Australia, it's the 22nd day of the Omer. Because I'm one day ahead. So the question becomes, assuming I arrive in Australia in the daytime, what do? So most poskim say the following. Most poskim say, well, okay, you missed your chance to count the 22nd day of the Omer at night because you arrived in Australia in the day. So count day 22 now, without a bracha, and then follow the Australian count, as long as you're in Australia. Okay, in other words, I went from 21 to 22, so I just count 22 and then continue. The Rebbe's chiddush was the following. This is what the Rebbe said. The Rebbe said that the holiday of Shavuos is very different than every other holiday. Every holiday in the Torah has a calendar date. Pesach has a calendar date, the 15th of Nisan. Rosh Hashanah has a calendar date, the 1st of Tishrei. Sukkot has a calendar date. Yom Kippur has a calendar date, the 10th of Tishrei. Sukkot has a calendar date, the 15th of Tishrei. Do you know, this is something people don't realize. It is true that we observe Shavuos on the 6th of Sivan. That is true. But you know that the Torah does not say observe Shavuos on the 6th of Sivan. The Torah says, observe Shavuos on the 50th day of your Omer count. It happens to be based on our calendar that will be the 6th of Sivan. But that's only because we have a fixed calendar of 30 days, 29 days. In the time of the Beis HaMikdash, when months could have different lengths, Shavuos could be a different day. Shavuos is not wedded. You see the point here. Shavuos is not wedded to the 6th of Sivan. Shavuos is wedded to the 50th day of your Omer count. So because of this, the Rebbe said two things that are connected. Halacha number one is, your count is based on where you started your counting. So, if I started counting in Los Angeles, and today is day 21, even when I cross the date line into Australia, where for them it's day 22, it remains day 21 for me. And the following night, when Australia is counting day 23, I will count day 22. As the Rebbe says, your Omer count is where you were when you started counting. Even if you're a tourist. But if I was in LA, second day of Pesach, that is my count no matter where I am. Now, he then said, Chiddush number 2, which is even a bit more astounding, that your holiday of Shavuos will be based on the 50th day of your Omer count. Which actually means you will keep Shavuos one day earlier than Australia. You will keep Shavuos on the 5th of Sivan. And your second day will be the 6th of Sivan. And theoretically, on their second day, you don't have to keep it all, although probably you shouldn't do malacha. You see what the Rebbe's Chiddush is? The Rebbe's Chiddush is that your Omer count is not, the Rebbe's Chiddush is, your Omer count is not readjusted based on date line changes. It is based on your count. And not only is your Omer count not readjusted, but your holiday of Shavuos is going to be defined. You see, if it would have been a calendar date like Pesach, if I would travel from LA to Australia, and for me it's a day early, but for them it's closer to Pesach, I got to follow their date. My calendar gets readjusted. But my Omer count does not get readjusted, because my Omer count is my individual obligation to count 49 days and celebrate a holiday after those 49 days. That's called Shavuos, the holiday of weeks. So this is a very, very, very big Chiddush, that the holiday of Shavuos depends on a person's individual Omer count, and that Omer count is not readjusted. This is the Rebbe's Psach, but again, as I say, I'm not sure if Chabad keeps this Lamaisa. So again, you okay?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So if any of you are going to be crossing the date line during the Omer before Shavuos, please consult with
What
the
about
rabbi.
the reverse? Like you were there for
Okay.
Pesach and
So let's go. So let's go in reverse. Okay.
And also,
Yeah.
sorry, just to make it more
Yeah.
complicated, two other complications. The first is, if you're Lubavitch, then even if you made Aliyah, your Rav would have told you to keep 2 days of Pesach there. Does that mean you have to keep 2 days of Shavuos here if you came back? And because really you're counting by there. And also, one other thing, but anyways.
Yeah. So I think the second question is an easier question. I think for sure you would not have to keep 2 days of Shavuos. The Rebbe is just saying that when you define your 50th day, it's based on your Omer count, and that's going to be true. That's going to be based on the LA count. But Lagabe Yom Tov Sheni, first of all, keep in mind Chabad's opinion. Chabad Shidalta Rebbe's opinion is even if you're a tourist from Chutz La'aretz, you only have to keep 1 day. So we're not going to say a person who makes Aliyah is going to be more chamor than a tourist, right? So for sure you wouldn't have to keep 2 days. And Israel and America are on the same side of the date line, so you're not going to have a different Omer count.
Oh, okay.
You see, Israel and America are on the same side of the date line.
If you came from Thailand, you would have a different.
Yeah, according to the Rebbe, this would even apply to going to the land of Israel. I mean,
But does that mean that person's like, because we get like a certain level of kedusha of the day here in Eretz Yisrael? So
yeah, it's a very unusual. I mean, spiritually, how you explain it is very, very odd. But it seems to be that HaKadosh Baruch Hu opens up like a private channel of kedusha based on when you've completed your Omer period. Yeah, and that would apply even to Eretz Yisrael.
Oh, and what if you forgot to count, so you're not counting? Then do you keep Shavuos the same day here in Israel?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the logic would be that if you actually weren't doing the counting, then you're like everybody else. You keep it the way they keep it here. Yeah. Okay. Now let's take the opposite situation. Let's say you're going from LA. Let's say from Australia to LA. In other words, you're going west to east. Now here, you're going to gain a day, meaning you're going Tuesday, and all of a sudden, Tuesday is day 21. All of a sudden, Monday, you go from Tuesday to Monday, all of a sudden it's day 20, and at night, it's going to be day 21, but you already counted day 21. So most opinions say you just count day 21 again and you just readjust yourself. According to the Rebbe, you would continue day 22, and according to the Rebbe, you would keep Shavuos a day later. So instead of keeping it the 6th and 7th of Sivan, you would keep it the 7th and 8th of Sivan. You see? So this is a chiddush, and as I say, it's not clear. The Rebbe had different intimations whether he was saying this more of a theoretical halacha or he actually wanted Hasidim to follow it. I think there's some uncertainty within Chabad itself whether they follow such a psak. The bottom line is because of this uncertainty, people are advised not to cross the date line during Sefirat Haomer and to try to stay on the same side of the date. Okay, any general questions about this? Okay. Yeah.
I just want to say, I know someone who went from the U.S. to Australia and is Chabad like during the Sefira and had to keep an extra day of Yom Tov just in case.
Okay. So, in other words, he followed the Rebbe only to be strict, meaning he didn't...
I think so, yes, the Rav.
Right, he didn't use it to not keep the Yom Tov of Australia.
No.
Okay.
An extra day.
All right, so that's l'chumra. People sometimes will do extra practices to be strict, but the Rebbe, in theory, the Rebbe actually said you don't even have to keep the Yom Tov of Australia. But as I say, probably no Rebbe is going to say that today. So that's probably what's going to happen.
And I've seen people also go around the world. How would that work? Like maybe they cross the date line twice, or something like that.
How they do what?
Maybe like they cross the date line twice, so like they go, like they travel.
Yeah, you have to go around the world. You cross the date line twice.
And then they like get rid of that issue.
Yeah, so if you go back and forth, you're going to have to readjust. So again, according to the Rebbe, in a sense, at least for the Omer, it's relatively simple. According to the Rebbe, crossing the date line is a non-event. You just continue your counting of the Omer. So no matter how many times you cross the date line, it's all going to be the same. But according to most poskim, it gets a little crazy because every time you cross the date line, you're going to have to readjust your Omer countings and the like. Some actually say you should count both dates, your original date and the new date. You should count 2 days at a time until you get back to your original point of origin. Okay.
What if you're not going back?
Now, Okay, so as they say, it's a crazy thing. There are a lot of parts of the world where life is very, very crazy. If you live in the Arctic regions or the Antarctic regions, you have a whole other set of problems. Nothing to do with the daytime. You have a problem of day and night because for 6 months it's only dark, and for 6 months it's only light. So how do you keep Shabbos? When do you daven Shachris? When do you daven Mariv? Right, all sorts of issues there. So when it comes to longitudes, you got dateline problems. When it comes to latitude, you have day and night problems. Same thing with astronauts. All sorts of crazy questions, which we don't really have. I mean, there are many opinions, but when does an astronaut orbits around the Earth? An astronaut experiences sunrise, sunset every 15 minutes. I don't mean the astronauts are those people who went up in the rocket for 10 minutes. That's nothing. But I'm talking about a real astronaut that orbits the Earth. So, do they daven Shabbos, Mincha, Mariv continuously? And do they keep Shabbos every half an hour because they've gone around the Earth seven times? So there's a lot of different issues about this. And,
Have we had any Orthodox Jews in space yet?
I didn't hear you.
Have we had any Orthodox Jews in space yet?
Not yet. We did have an Israeli fellow who actually died in space and exploded. He brought a mezuzah. Did you kidding?
They do Kiddush in space and
Yeah. He did something. He was not Shomer Shabbos, but he did some mitzvahs.
Yeah.
Some mitzvahs there. I wouldn't advise a frum guy to be an astronaut. I think there are there's too many shilas. A lot of difficult shilas. Okay. But by the way, there's even an argument that you're not chayiv to keep mitzvahs in space because the Torah was given for Earth. So there actually is a svara that once you're beyond the atmosphere of the Earth, you're patur from the mitzvahs.
Okay, let's
So
all go to
if
space.
we ever colonize Mars or whatever it will be, some say, you'd be patur from everything. On the other hand, some say it's forbidden for a Jew to put himself in a situation where they don't have to keep the Torah. So, on one hand, you're patur, and the other hand, you're not allowed to put yourself in that situation. So, a lot of interesting questions. Now, let me point out, there's another part of Sefirat Haomer that is a little confusing because people connect it, but it's totally not connected. That is, we know that during this period of time, we have certain mourning restrictions. We don't do certain joyous things. We don't make weddings. We don't listen to music. Although music is a very big shaila. Some say it's only live music. Some will permit recorded music. Some are strict on recorded music. Some people, even if they're strict on recorded music, will allow a cappella tapes. These are those Sefirat tapes that they sell. Some are strict on that. I'm not here to give you a psak halach on that. And then there are heterim. If people need music for exercise, or people have depression, or whatever it is. So there are leniencies, and we don't have to go into all the leniencies right now, but there is a general concept of a certain sadness that we have during this time. Now, the important thing to keep in mind, just in terms of perspective, is this has nothing to do with the mitzvah of counting the Omer. Meaning, the Torah does not say at all that this is a sad time. And lahepach, in terms of basic logic, this is actually a happy time. This is a happy time because we're looking forward to getting the Torah. Meaning there's nothing intrinsic in the counting of the Omer that would make it sad. So on a Torah level, there is no Avelis, there's only Simcha. Avelis is mourning. So where does the Avelis come from? It comes from something much later. And this is the story of the great Rabbi Akiva. You'll remember that Rabbi Akiva was an ignorant shepherd. And he was 40 years old. He was working for the wealthiest landowner in Yerushalayim, Kalba Sabua. And he was ignorant. He didn't know how to read. And Kalba Sabua's daughter, Rachel, saw something in him, and she wanted to marry him. And her father was so incensed that he made a vow. He disinherited her. He said, if you marry this man, I will give you none of my wealth. You will live in poverty. And she lived in poverty with Rabbi Akiva. He was not Rabbi Akiva then. And she decided to help him learn Torah. So she let him go away to yeshiva in Yerushalayim. For 12 years, he started off with the children. 12 years. And after 12 years, she was living in poverty for all those years. And after 12 years, he comes back and he overhears her talking to a neighbor. And the neighbor says, what type of husband do you have who leaves you for 12 years? And she said, I wouldn't mind if you'd leave me for another 12 years. So he turns around without even saying hello. Very strange story. Goes back for another 12 years. He's gone for 24 years.
This is Rabbi Akiva?
Rabbi Akiva. She's living in poverty all this time. Her father is not helping her. Her father is enormously wealthy. Doesn't give her anything. It's hard to understand him. But he's so embarrassed, he's so ashamed that she married this ignorant man. And after 24 years, Rabbi Akiva is the greatest rabbi in Israel. He comes back with 24,000 students. Can you imagine 24,000 students? I mean, the largest yeshiva in the world has around 7,000 to 8,000 students. The largest yeshiva in the world. This is 24,000 students.
Where is that?
Well, the largest yeshiva in the world is either the Mir Yeshiva here or Lakewood in New Jersey. Between 7,000 and 8,000 students. Largest yeshiva in the world. But this is 24,000 students. Anyway, Kalba Savua, that's Rachel. Rachel is Rabbi Akiva's wife. Rachel's father-in-law. Doesn't recognize that this is the ignorant shepherd that worked for him so many years before, but he knows he's a great rabbi, and he knows he made a vow, and a great rabbi can release him from the vow. So he goes over to Rabbi Akiva and said, many years ago I made a vow that I would give nothing to my daughter because she married an ignorant man. I would like to be released from my vow. So Rabbi Akiva asked his father-in-law, without identifying himself, if you would have known that your son-in-law would become a Talmid Chacham, would you have made the vow? And he said, a Talmid Chacham? If he would have known how to read, I wouldn't have made the vow. So Rabbi Akiva released him from the vow and then revealed himself. So, can you imagine the joy? In fact, it mentions Rachel was dressed in rags and she wanted to see Rabbi Akiva, and the students thought she was a crazy woman and they pushed her away. And Rabbi Akiva said the very famous words, Shali v'shalochem, all that I have and all that you have, Shalah is because of her. Because of her. So can you imagine the joy that Rachel feels now? All the years of struggle, all the years of suffering, all the years of poverty. There must have been many moments in which she lost hope, and now she sees, Baruch Hashem, everything is worth it. But unfortunately, that's not the end of the story. Within a relatively short time, all 24,000 students died. They died in a plague. And they died between Pesach and Shavuos, the period of the Omer. And only 5 students remained. And all of the Torah of Klal Yisrael are from those 5 students. Rabbi Meir, the Mishnah, all comes from them. Now, the Gemara in Maseches Yevamos says, why did those 24,000 students die? I mean, they died to a plague, but why did Hashem allow this to happen? And the Gemara says, because they did not show proper honor and respect to each other. So Hashem took them away. Just looking, 24,000. Now, people ask the question, Okay, now I want to be very clear here. The Gemara does not say, therefore we have mourning during spheres. It's not mentioned. In fact, mourning during spheres is not mentioned at all. The Gemara just mentions the story. In the writings of the Gaonim later, it is recorded that to commemorate the deaths of Rabbi Akiva's students during this period of time, we have various minhagim of sadness connected to that. So be sure you know the difference in what the Gemara says and what the Gaonim say. So the minhagim of Avelis come from the post-Talmudic Gaonim. Now, people ask the question, okay, 24,000 people dying is of course a tragedy. One person dying is a tragedy. But come on, haven't we had much worse? I mean, we don't have a period of mourning because of the Holocaust, because of the Crusades. In the Holocaust, 6 million Jews died. The Crusades, you had hundreds of thousands of communities wiped out. Meaning, what is this thing that every single year we have a long period of Avelos because of the deaths of the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva? And we don't have comparable Avelos for periods of mourning that seemingly are much worse. So there are two answers to this. Answer number one is that you don't realize that it's not just the deaths of 24,000. These were virtually all of the people who were learning Torah in Klal Yisrael. Meaning the ability to transmit the Torah to the next generation was hanging by a thin thread. 5 people. So it's not just we lost X number of people. The whole Torah was endangered. If the Torah would be lost from Klal Yisrael, that would be the end of the Jewish people. That's one idea. But the second idea maybe is even more important. And that is, if the idea of mourning was simply to mourn, then yeah, maybe we should mourn for the 6 million more than for the students of Rabbi Akiva. But the idea is not mourning. The idea is thinking about the reason for their death. When it comes to the Holocaust, we don't have Nevi'im, we don't have Chachamim, we can't give reasons. So we mourn and we're sad, but there's no reason we're entitled to give. The Rebbe talks about that also. We can't give reasons for the Holocaust. But for the deaths of Rabbi Akiva, we have a reason. They didn't show proper kavod to each other. And therefore, the reason I mourn the students of Rabbi Akiva is to resolve in my own life to show other Yidden respect, dignity, kavod. So it's not mourning for the sake of mourning. It's mourning for the sake of cheshbon hanefesh. And it's never an accident. Why did their deaths occur during this period of time? Because this is the period of time that we prepare for Matan Torah. And in order to be zocheh to receive the Torah, we have to be ish echad u'belev echad. We have to be like one person, one heart. When we don't show kavod to each other, when we disrespect each other, we disparage each other, we're not united as ish echad u'belev echad. Therefore, we're not worthy of receiving God's Torah. So, in a sense, this period of time is supposed to be a happy, joyous time. But it's intermingled with Avelos because of the students of Rabbi Akiva. But even the story of the Avelos is to give us the insight to prepare ourselves to receive Hashem's Torah. Ish echad u'belev echad, like one person with one soul. Now, the thing about the Avelos, though, is that the Avelos is a little different, meaning the counting of the Omer is 49 days. But the mourning days of the Omer are not 49 days. Well, there are different minhagim. There are many, many different minhagim how you observe the mourning days, the not wedding days, and the like. Maybe I'll save it for a little next week. But some people start from the second day of Pesach, and they go all the way to Shavuos. That's 49 days of mourning. Other people start from the second day of Pesach and they go to Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer, and then they stop. Other people start Rosh Chodesh and they go until 3 days before Shavuos. I'll talk about this maybe next week. But that's why different people can make weddings during different parts of the Omer, because it all depends on what their minhagim are. And we'll discuss next week the different types of customs, which minhag of Chabad and the like. But the point that a lot of people get mixed up is because they identify the mourning as part of the mitzvah of the Sefirat Haomer. It's two very different things whose origin came from very different places. The mitzvah of counting is in the Torah, although we have a machlokas of today it's rabbinic. The Avelos dates from after the Gemara. It's not in the Gemara. It dates from after the Gemara to commemorate the tragedy of Rabbi Akiva's 24,000 students dying. By the way, one part of the story that's often overlooked is the fact that Rabbi Akiva, after he lost the 24,000 students, he began again by teaching 5 students. Now, we sometimes don't appreciate what a magnificent accomplishment that was. You struggled for 24 years and you finally have 24,000 students and you lose everything. One could have a breakdown. One could be depressed. One could feel a lack of hope. And Rabbi Akiva's greatness was he started again from the very beginning. He said, I lost everything. I will do what I can. That's a tremendous lesson. The emes is, this was the lesson of the Riyadh, lesson of the Frierdiker Rebbe, coming to America after the Holocaust. Many people were broken. They thought there was no chance. They lost their families. They lost yeshivos. They lost rabbanim. They lost gedolim. They lost tzaddikim. And the message of the Riyadh, which is why it was so important at the time, was that we start again. We don't give up. We keep on going. Even if we lose everything, we keep on rebuilding. And that's again, one of the messages that the Rebbe himself took from his father-in-law in 50 years was this idea of not giving up. And one of the great people who taught us that was Rabbi Akiva. People sometimes don't focus on the story that after he lost 24,000, he says, okay, I'm going to start with 5. No, he didn't like say, what's the use? I'll do 5. If I have 5, I'll do 5. Okay, so we will stop here, and the Mr. Shem will continue with this next week. We should have a wonderful week.
Thank you.